Sam Bass, one of the Wild West's most legendary outlaws. You may have heard his name, but how much do you really know about the man behind the legend? Most people remember Bass for his daring train robberies and outlaw reputation. But his story is far more complicated than just a life of crime. From his time as a struggling cowboy to his failed attempt at striking gold, and even his biggest heist that changed everything, there's a lot more to Sam Bass than meets the eye. This video is part one of a two-part deep dive into Sam Bass's lesser-known history. Today, we'll explore his early years, his days as a cowboy, a gold prospector, and the legendary train robbery that put him on the map. But there's still more to uncover, so be sure to stay tuned for part two, where we'll cover his final days, his legendary gunfight, and the shocking betrayal that led to his downfall. Get ready to uncover the untold story of Sam Bass. Let's dive in. The cowboy who rode into outlaw legend. Before Sam Bass became one of the Wild West's most infamous outlaws, he lived the tough, unforgiving life of a cowboy. In the early 1870s, he found work in Denton, Texas, where he joined cattle drives along the Chisholm Trail, moving longhorns from Texas up to Kansas railheads. This was one of the most grueling jobs in the frontier. Long days in the scorching sun, dangerous river crossings, and the constant threat of cattle rustlers or stampedes. Cowboys were the backbone of the booming cattle industry, but for all their hard work, most made only about $30 to $40 a month, barely enough to scrape by. The life of a cowboy wasn't just about riding the open range, it was about survival. Sam and his fellow cowboys had to endure extreme weather, from relentless Texas heat to brutal thunderstorms that could turn dirt trails into impassable mud. At night, they took turns keeping watch over the herd, often fending off wolves, bandits, or even Native American war parties. Stampedes were one of the biggest dangers. A single loud noise could send hundreds of longhorns into a wild panic, trampling everything in their path. Cowboys who failed to react quickly often ended up crushed beneath the hooves of their own herd. Despite the hardships, Bass seemed to love the freedom of the cowboy lifestyle. He was known for his natural ability with horses, quickly earning a reputation as a skilled rider and handler. He also had a talent for gambling and horse racing. He would often bet on horses in small Texas towns and win just enough to keep his pockets full. But the low wages of cowboy work weren't enough for someone with Sam's ambitions. He had bigger dreams, and the dusty cattle trails weren't going to take him where he wanted to go. Eventually, Bass decided that the slow grind of honest work wasn't for him. He left the cattle business behind and turned to gambling full-time, betting on horse races and searching for faster ways to make money. It was during this time that he met Joel Collins, a fellow gambler who had a taste for high-stakes risks. Together, they would form a gang that would soon make history, not as cowboys, but as outlaws. Did Sam Bass ever stand a chance of staying on the right side of the law? Or was his time as a cowboy just a stepping stone to something far more dangerous? Let me know what you think in the comments below. The gold rush gamble that led to outlaw life. Before Sam Bass became one of the most notorious outlaws of the Wild West, he was just another man chasing the American dream. In 1874, lured by the promise of fortune, Bass and a small group of companions set out for the Black Hills of South Dakota to try their luck as gold prospectors. At the time, the region was booming with miners hoping to strike it rich, but for Bass, the dream would quickly turn into disappointment. Unlike the rugged prospectors who spent years digging into the unforgiving terrain, Bass had no experience in mining. He and his crew never found a single profitable gold vein, spending months panning through rivers and breaking apart rock with little to show for it. Many prospectors in the Black Hills ended up poor, starving, and desperate, and Bass quickly realized that he was wasting his time. Instead of striking gold, he found himself broke, exhausted, and questioning his next move. But failure wouldn't stop him. It would push him toward an even more daring path. After leaving the mines empty-handed, Bass and his companions found a new way to make money. robbing supply wagons that carried gold and provisions to other prospectors. It wasn't long before he abandoned any hope of honest work altogether. He took his winnings from gambling and horse racing and joined up with Joel Collins, a man with a reputation for fast schemes and even faster gunplay. This would be the moment where Sam Bass turned from a failed prospector into a full-fledged outlaw. Within a few short years, he would go from a broke miner to robbing trains and outwitting Texas Rangers, but his luck wouldn't last forever. Would Sam Bass have chosen a different path if he had struck gold? Or was he always destined to be an outlaw? Let me know what you think in the comments below. From cowboy to stagecoach robber, Sam Bass didn't start his outlaw career by robbing trains. Before he became one of the most wanted men in the West, he cut his teeth on stagecoach robberies. In 1877, after failing as a gold prospector and gambling away most of his money, Bass teamed up with Joel Collins, a fellow drifter with big ambitions. Together, they put together a gang and set their sights on stagecoaches, the lifeblood of frontier travel. These coaches carried everything from gold shipments to mail and supplies, making them prime targets for outlaws looking to make a quick fortune. Unlike banks, which were heavily guarded, stagecoaches often traveled through isolated, rugged terrain, making them vulnerable to ambushes. Bass and his gang took advantage of this, carefully choosing remote locations where they could strike with speed and surprise. Armed with revolvers and bandanas over their faces, they would block the path, force the driver to stop, and demand cash, gold, and valuables from passengers. Sometimes, they even went through the mailbags, searching for hidden money or valuable documents they could sell. One of the things that made Bass stand out from other outlaws was his charm and showmanship. While some robbers were ruthless, Bass was known for being polite, even cracking jokes with passengers as he relieved them of their money. This kind of charismatic outlaw persona would later make him a folk hero in some circles. However, not all stagecoach robberies went smoothly. Sometimes passengers fought back, or armed guards rode along to protect high-value shipments. In these cases, gunfights broke out, and the gang had to flee before reinforcements arrived. Despite the risks, stagecoach robbery proved profitable but unpredictable. Sometimes they walked away with thousands in gold. Other times they found little more than a handful of cash and some pocket watches. Realizing they needed bigger scores, Bass and his crew started targeting trains, believing the railroad would hold far greater rewards. This decision would ultimately change Bass's fate forever, leading to the legendary Union Pacific train robbery that put him on the map as one of the most wanted men in Texas. The biggest train heist in Union Pacific history. In the summer of 1877, Sam Bass was no longer just a cowboy or a small-time stagecoach robber. He was about to make history. On September 18, 1877, Bass and his gang pulled off the largest train robbery in Union Pacific history, seizing $60,000 in freshly minted gold coins. That's over $1.5 million in today's money. A haul so big, it cemented Bass's reputation as one of the most daring outlaws of the Old West. The heist took place in Big Springs, Nebraska, a small, quiet town along the Union Pacific Railroad. The gang had learned that the train leaving Omaha that night was carrying a shipment of newly minted $20 gold pieces from the Denver Mint. Unlike stagecoaches, which carried valuables in locked safes, train express cars had cash and gold in wooden boxes, making them a much easier target. As the train pulled into Big Springs, Bass and his men lay in wait, their revolvers loaded and ready. They moved swiftly, forcing the train to a stop and overpowering the express car guards. Inside, they hit the jackpot. Boxes filled with gleaming gold coins, freshly minted and easy to spend without suspicion. In addition to the gold, they also looted $1,300 in cash and valuables from passengers and the train crew before disappearing into the night. What made this robbery so shocking wasn't just the amount stolen, but how effortlessly Bass and his gang pulled it off. Most outlaws struggled to crack safes or fumbled their way through train holdups, but Bass's crew worked with precision. They knew exactly where to strike, how to take control, and how to vanish without a trace. However, the massive haul would also prove to be their downfall. The gold was too much to spend at once without raising suspicion, and as Bass and his gang split up to lay low, lawmen began hunting them down. Over the next year, one by one, members of the gang were captured or killed, but Sam Bass remained elusive. This one legendary heist turned Sam Bass into a wanted man across the frontier. It was the moment he went from small-time outlaw to full-blown Wild West legend. But as history shows, when you steal that much money, the law never stops looking for you. Was Sam Bass a brilliant outlaw or just a man who got too lucky for his own good? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like and subscribe for more Wild West legends.